The real enemy as we move forward into this future is ignorance. Ignorance is far from bliss. Ignorance is based in fear. Because fear is what severs the human being from their own God-given empathy, compassion, intelligence, cognitive abilities, and creativity. That most people, the vast majority of people in this world, are entirely unaware that they're in a sort of sleepwalk. That the human intelligence is so vast and expansive that a human being can unknowingly live in a pervasive fight or flight reaction that has been undetected by even the most brilliant minds in the field of psychology. As people live out lives believing that their own reactions, their own emotions, their entitled opinions and dogmas that they protect with the veracity of a primitive animal, we don't even learn lessons from the natural world, as we actually think we've made it somewhere, like we've transcended the jungle, when the jungle has more peace, more integrity, more dignity than the whole of mankind. That when you look at an animal like a lion, you think about a predator. What you fail to notice is that the animal is entirely integrous, that it lives in total balance, and its reproductive rates, its predatory instinct, its metabolic rate, its numerical relationship to the animals through which it depends is maintained as a deal with the gift of life. The lion instinctively makes the other species stronger by hunting specifically for the weak ones. While this may seem like a strategic advantage because those might occur as easy, it's a strategic advantage for longevity. That the lion is probably not the fiercest predator to ever walk that continent. Because if the lion was more malignant, like a human being, well, it would have eaten all of its food already, and it would have perished. That life is a necessary balance, and every living organism except for human beings respects that balance, because the human being is entirely pathological. But the pathology of the human mind is cured. That the answers have been here for thousands of years. The answers have been not in the world of psychology, but in the world of enlightenment and transformation, where you have two competing fields of study. Psychology tells you that you're traumatized, that you're broken, damaged emotionally, afflicted by things outside the boundaries of your control, your parents, your upbringing. That an offshoot would be psychiatry, that asserts chemical imbalances that you inherited are responsible for your afflictions. And psychology permanently identifies you with a category of mental illness. And these genetic anomalies that seem to have swept the globe have no parallel in the natural order of life. That for millions of years, our brains evolved, and here we are, 10,000 years since we started using language. And while enlightenment has taught us that the subjective experience of ego is an illusion once broken restores the human consciousness to a present moment experience that models all other animals. And that the voice in your head disappears and you stop analyzing and thinking. And that same voice, they called Satan and the serpent in the Bible, is the architect of the human subjective space, a world of inescapable reactions that are involuntary, forcing human beings to analyze because the dissociative power of norepinephrine blocking cognitions. And as we look at human beings and see this vast discrepancy between the Einsteins, Mozarts, and Thomas Jeffersons and the average people that can barely explain a cigarette lighter, we fail to notice that these profound intellectual discrepancies do not have any parallel in the animal kingdom. That if you look at a German Shepherd, they're all very similar. A dolphin, an elephant, a chimpanzee, baboon, gorilla. Well, what would explain that? And then in psychology, you have two different domains of consciousness, subconscious and conscious. Whereas in enlightenment, you have one, mind, that when unified, reveals profound and extraordinary cognitive abilities and creative capacities that, for those fortunate enough to find themselves in this world, reveal something extraordinary. What I can tell you it's like for me, when I look at my past and I think about the way that I used to be before the Landmark Forum, where I had no creativity, I had some mechanical aptitude, where, I had, unbeknownst to me, profound inhibition socially, profound inability to connect with and relate to people, profound social anxieties that could not really ever have been addressed outside the world of transformation. There's no chance. I don't even know if I would have made it out of my 20s without Landmark. And I'm talking about a 3-day class that before and after are two different human beings. And what you learn in transformation is that your past has absolutely nothing to do with who you are in the moment. And transformation and enlightenment affords a future that has absolutely no connection to your past. That consciousness is complete and total freedom of the mind, where there is no arbitrary reactionary emotion that becomes the basis of your decisions. That a human being living in any form of pattern, in relationships, professionally, a human being that's suffering emotionally, a human being that has any measure of confusion, a human being that is forced to analyze their world, is a human being completely dissociated and disconnected from reality. That all these subjective opinions, all these dogmas, all these crusades, all these disagreements about God, all this violence, all this inhumanity, all this differentiation, north versus south, east versus west, us versus them, US versus Mexico, this side versus that side. And you look at the world we're in and look at how dangerous we've made it, thinking that we've escaped the jungle somehow, when we have created an abomination, a curse upon this earth, unable to humanize, unable to relate, unable to empathize, labeling. Well, that's why I'm writing my book. Ignorance is the willful denial of observational truth and objectivity. Ignorance is a paradigm of fear and entitlement, a desire to segregate, separate, individuate. Ignorance is the enemy of goodness in all its forms. Love is not an emotion. Love is not what you're chasing. You're chasing fantasy. You're chasing wholeness. You're chasing the wholeness that you eliminated yourself. That your pursuit of becoming better, perfect, improving, learning, and growing is the very basis of your suffering. Because as you bend yourself to try to accommodate this world, a world of your own creation, your own subjective experience, your own reactionary reality, the world as it occurs to be from your perspective is generated based on the projection of your own fears of rejection, abandonment, disappointment, your fears of inadequacy, your fears of never being enough, that you will pursue endlessly, no matter how many times you fail and collapse. You'll be seeking a comfort zone, trying to replace the emotions that went missing at the age of 5 or the age of 2 or 1, depending on narcissist or not. And psychology is the equivalent of the Catholic Church, a monopoly on the human mind, where priests would weep as they begged you to surrender to the power of God, as they lit you on fire to force your confession when you said the earth was round, where the fear of being wrong about your entitled heaven, an abomination of the teachings, became the basis of our relationship to our messiahs, where we transform messages of compassion, love, kindness, oneness, selflessness, where the extraordinary gifts of the human mind were nailed to a cross, or for saying the table of brotherhood in America, the land of the free, home of the brave, would put you in the crosshairs of Christians. And Martin Luther King's promised land was extinguished with his life. And now I look at America on the verge of total collapse, where academia is silent, where the hippies who stood against the injustices of war predicated on fear and ignorance are gone, replaced by propaganda puppets, people who say freedom and support the troops as the troops come home in body bags or stand in line at the VA to be traumatized for the next 10 years before they jump off a building, because psychology does not even have the integrity to acknowledge its own ineptitude, ineffectiveness, and arrogance, and its own denial of its own futility. Can't even explain why children are coming back to schools to play Call of Duty, or where did all these incels come from? Or when did women become adult entertainers trying to keep up with the Kardashians? And when did being sexy and seeking the validation of every single man become the only method through which women could experience value? And when did men become trolls, become providers that mandate the subordination and submissiveness of all females in order to fulfill their nonsensical social roles. And where did they get that? That nobody can even articulate the utility of powerful psychology through focus groups, think tanks, and consumerism and indoctrination through education over the last 100 years has produced a population of people entirely disabled from seeing reality at all, clamoring to groups and fighting amongst themselves like children, trying to raise awareness by arranging themselves in victim movements and using the same propaganda tools to straw man, individuate, and claim victimhood for things not even happening within their own experience of life. And as we fight, as we throw children in cages, as we arm ourselves in preparation for our own self-destruction, and we've allowed corporate America and the government to collude in sending our children off to die simply to take tax money and take the black card of the Treasury and max it out to the tune of a sum of money that is maybe 10 times the total sum of US dollars in circulation. A country with $100 million or $100 trillion worth of debt. One big plantation where people mindlessly run on a treadmill seeking the validation of everyone else to fix themselves, and they'll see a foreclosure sign in their neighborhood and make them feel better about themselves. Or they'll be paying attention online to see if the news supply is getting abused too, because that would make them feel better. The proverbial people pleaser whose preoccupation with the suffering of someone else is what's going to dominate them for a year in a world where no other adult species has abandonment anxiety. And so as people walk around as entitled, spoiled Karens, expressing their misery while funneling narcissists, psychopaths into our government, they fail to realize that narcissistic abuse cycle, well, the entire population of America is at the tail end of the devaluation of the human being. And academia is just sitting there, inept, while people unable to even intellectually relate to one another without an agency telling them that you're certified to speak on an issue, or anybody talking is silenced because nobody wants to confront reality here. They want to explain it, they want to cry about it, they want to be a victim, but that's where it ends. They want to explain their suffering and find the culprit. And now conspiracy theories, the highest level of ignorance in the world of information, is the group thinking of people who would become the embodiment of ignorance by generating an identity that came from a think tank and fight and argue over ideas that they have never once originated themselves in a world they don't understand and they're afraid to understand, and they diffuse the responsibility of their own intellect, their own creativity, their own solutions, and wait, sucking their thumbs, for the heartless and mindless to make their decisions for them. Spoiled with consumerism in 100 years of indoctrination, filling their minds with useless knowledge and ruminating. We call that therapy. A group of victims that is not rising to the occasion of life.